So once again, welcome. Telling your story, tips to reach donors with your Candid profile. Once again, my name is Robert Gibbons, and I'm the Director of Education here at Cal Nonprofits, also known as the California Association of Nonprofits. And we're so lucky to have a large group of panelists here, including two folks from Candid, um, Janet Camarena uh, and Tracy Kaufman, who will be telling us more as we move along here. I'll take it to the next slide, please. So just a little bit of housekeeping to get going. It seems like folks are well versed with the chat feature. We also have a Q&A button, and this is going to be where you can drop questions in. We will do our very best to answer those questions live during the session. In the event that we're not able to answer them as they come up, we do have a short question and answer session at the end of our presentation, where we'll be able to address them there. There also is a closed captioning feature. So if you click the CC button down at the bottom of your Zoom profile, you'll be able to avail yourself of the closed captioning. You can take us to the next slide, please. A quick shout out and plug for nonprofits. So we are involved in several different sort of arrays of interacting with the nonprofit community here. We work both in the policy advocacy space, education space, and more recently have dived into the data and research arena. So you can take us to the next slide, please. And another plug just quickly for membership. Today, we're really lucky to make this webinar free for the entire community, but many of our webinars do include a fee. So to alleviate yourself of that fee, you can join as a member and also avail yourself of many of the member benefits that we have. And you can explore those member benefits at calnonprofits.org. Right now, we're also offering a 15% discount for new members with the code MEM24. And I'll be sure to reference this again at the end of our webinar and include that information in the slides in the recording that will go out following the presentation. Next slide, please. So I'd like to bring on our panelists for today. We can start out with Janet, Tracy, Amy, and Vanessa. We're so happy to have all of you here today. Janet is the Director of Partnerships at Candid. Tracy is the Educational Program Manager. Amy Shea is the Director of Institutional Partnerships at the wonderful Glide Foundation. And Vanessa Schneit is the Vice President of Cause Communications. So we're so thrilled to have all of you here today. It's a full house, and we're really excited to hear from some of you, not only about the power of Candid and the ways that it has helped your organization, but tips that you might have for our community for them to better use that platform and reasons why it might be impactful for their organizations, maybe with their existing GuideStar platform, or if they're new to GuideStar in general. So I will pass the baton over to Tracy, and you can take it away.
All right, thank you, Robert, and thank you everyone for joining today. So welcome to our session. We are going to talk all about Candid profiles and basically talk about why do these profiles exist? What purpose do they serve? What are they exactly? Who looks at them? And what types of things could you potentially do with yours? Next slide, please. So briefly, for the sake of context, it may be helpful to know a little bit about what Candid is as a full organization. Candid is a nonprofit organization made up of two pre-existing nonprofits, which are Foundation Center and GuideStar. And the Foundation Center piece of Candid has been around for a long time, since 1956. Since then, Foundation Center has been the #1 source of information, data, research, etc. on foundations and their grants worldwide. Whereas GuideStar has been around since about 1994. And what Foundation Center was for foundations and grants, GuideStar is for the entire sector, the entire nonprofit sector. GuideStar has long been the #1 source of data on the nonprofit sector within the US. And about 5.5, almost 6 years ago, the two organizations joined together, became one organization. We changed our name, and now we're known as Candid. Next slide, please. And basically now all of that data and information and research on everything pertaining to funders, nonprofits, grants, etc., it lives in the same place. And our mission is centered around the fact that every year, millions of nonprofits spend trillions of dollars around the world. Our job is to find out, where does that money come from? Where does that money go? And why does it matter? We connect the people who want to change the world to the resources that they need to do it. Next slide. So that brings us into the question of, what is a candid profile? So a candid profile refers distinctly to something in the GuideStar piece of Candid. I might sometimes use Candid profile and GuideStar interchangeably. Just consider them synonyms for each other. So let's maybe go into what a candid profile is. And before I really go into it, I would just love to get a sense of people's level of knowledge and experience with this so far. So with that, we do have a poll I would love to launch, which is, does your organization have a seal of transparency yet on its candid profile? If so, maybe say which level it has. If not, no. And if you're not sure, that's fine too. If you're thinking, I don't even know if we've claimed our profile, or maybe we've claimed it, I don't really know where we're at in terms of getting a seal of transparency. Give me just a moment to respond. We doing? We got a quorum yet on responses? Whenever we've got like the majority of attendees responding, maybe then we can
We've got
take
about
a look.
7% responding right now.
All right, that sounds pretty good to me.
And I can just read off those metrics. We have 6% responding yes to bronze. We have 6% to silver, 6% to gold, 22% platinum, which is wonderful.
Beautiful.
28% is no, and then 33 not sure. So it sounds like we've got a great space for some education today.
Okay, interesting how we have a lot of newcomers mixed with people who are so far along in their journey that they already have a platinum seal of transparency. All right, this is very good information to have. All right, so can I just say that even if you are not familiar with what a candid profile is, Candid knows who you are, because in most cases, they have your tax returns. So, part of the deal, as you probably know, of being a nonprofit organization is you are committed to transparency one way or another, which is to say your nonprofit's tax returns, your Form 990s, are public documents. And so anyone out there in the world who wants to look up your nonprofit's tax returns has the ability to do so any day of the week. And one of the key places where people go to look up a nonprofit's Form 990 is Candid through GuideStar.org. So at the very least, even if you haven't touched anything on the Candid site before, pretty good chance, with a few exceptions, that you have your nonprofit's tax returns posted on the site. If you were to look up your nonprofit, you would find their tax returns. However, any nonprofit also has the choice, if they so decide, to go in, claim their Candid profile, and add additional information, basically flesh it out and be able to use it as a bit more of a storytelling tool, which can be valuable in a lot of different ways, as we're all going to go into a bit over the course of this hour. And it really kind of gives you an opportunity to take charge of your own narrative. And it can be a great complement to your website, your social media, any other online presence that you may have. Next slide. The more information that you put into your Candid profile after claiming it on behalf of your nonprofit, the more information you put in, the greater the seal of transparency that you will receive. It starts at bronze, moves up to silver, then gold, and then the top level is the platinum seal of transparency. And I'll go through each of these in a little more detail, bit by bit. But I will mention, for those of you who've never seen any of this stuff before, that these are not seals of approval. These are not seals that say good nonprofit versus bad nonprofit. That's not our job here. That is not what we do. These are seals of transparency. How transparent of a nonprofit organization are you? How much information are you willing to share voluntarily about your inner workings? That is exactly what this is all about. Next slide. And so there are a lot of benefits to doing this. For one thing, sometimes when I talk about GuideStar and Candid profiles, I feel as though I'm selling something, but that is not what's going on here. This is a completely free opportunity to enhance your online identity in a place where people look. And I'll show you in a moment who exactly uses this information, who is looking up your profile potentially, so that you have an understanding of like, hey, why is it a good idea to do this? But ultimately, it helps enhance both your visibility and your credibility as an organization simultaneously. And it pretty much takes all of the essential information about what it is that you do and collects it into one place, so that when someone is trying to look up vital information about your organization, they can always rely on being able to look you up at this site and getting some solid information in a way that I think is a little different from just looking up someone's website. Like, for one thing, not everyone has a website, and even those who do, not all websites are created equal. Some of them serve different types of purposes, but also, you know how sometimes you load up an organization's website and it's hard to get to the information you need sometimes. Sometimes it'll be just like a big image and a bunch of like meaningless words. It'll just say something about empowerment, inspiration, synergy, and you have no idea what this nonprofit does, what their programs are, what kind of results they get, or really any of the kind of nitty-gritty meaningful information that you need to make the decisions that you need to make about this organization. Next slide. So ultimately, the biggest reason to take the time to go in and claim your organization's Candid profile and fill it out to the point where you get a seal of transparency, there's multiple reasons, but I think the biggest reason of all is that it has real results for your fundraising. There was a study done, I think it was through Villanova University, but was ultimately published in an accounting journal, in which 2 cohorts of nonprofits were studied over the course of a couple of years. In year 1, no one had a seal of transparency on Candid. In year 2, just one of the 2 cohorts of nonprofits took the time to get a seal of transparency. And what was found was that nonprofits who have a seal of transparency on GuideStar receive on average 53% more charitable contributions than those who don't. So this indicates that people look at these profiles and they use them to make charitable giving decisions. And I think that's a really important thing to be aware of. Next slide. All right, so who is using these profiles? I mean, honestly, anyone can look at these, but who specifically is doing a deep dive into what your nonprofit has going on behind the scenes? Next slide. Let's take a look. Okay, so there are over 200 different partner institutions that make use of Candid data in their systems. There are a lot. You are only looking at a very small sampling of those. So when it comes to like a lot of these big tech companies out there, for instance, if you have ever run a Facebook fundraiser, or if you've ever donated to a Facebook fundraiser, all of the information when someone clicks on one of those fundraisers that's like, oh, about this nonprofit, that kind of blurb that gets pulled from somewhere, it gets pulled from Candid data. It gets pulled from your Candid profile. So all kinds of people are seeing this information, and a ton of money is moving through Facebook fundraisers, among many other places using our data. Donor advised funds. If anyone here is lucky enough to get donations through donor advised funds, pretty much all of the major donor advised fund vehicles make use of Candid data. So for instance, let's say you have a donor who runs a donor advised fund through Fidelity Charitable, and they decide, I want to give to an arts organization in the state of California. What they're going to do is they're going to log into their profile in Fidelity Charitable, and they will be able to pull up GuideStar, Candid, and they can do a search for all the arts organizations in the state of California. And they can browse through and figure out who in that list do they want to give to. So what are they going to find when they find you? Are they going to find you? They're more likely to find you in the first place if you have a seal of transparency next to your nonprofit's name. And then once they open you up, what kinds of information can they pull out to make an educated giving decision? So that is one thing that is pretty important. I think another really important thing to focus on here is this bottom piece, grants management. When you are applying for grants from a foundation, all of these funders, they have their grants management software. And when they're processing your grant application, they are going to go into their grants management software. And when they do their due diligence to make sure, is this organization exactly who they say they are in their grant proposal? They are able to look you up through their software and find your Candid profile. And again, what are they going to find when they get there? They're going to be looking for things to help figure out their due diligence process. What are your financials like, for instance? A lot of that kind of information, your staffing, your board composition, they want to know that information. But they also want to compare between the story you tell in your grant proposal versus the story that you tell in your Candid profile. Are those stories consistent with one another? Is there a coherent narrative? And you can tell, all right, this is the same organization with the same kinds of programs, same kinds of results, the same kinds of values. And so it's really helpful if you take the time to make sure that your profile is comprehensive and kept up to date. Next slide. Okay, so if, for those of you who've never done this before, if I've convinced you at this point that it might be a good idea to go in and take charge of your Candid profile and put in information, what do you do from here? Next slide. So first, you're going to go to GuideStar.org. If you see in the upper left-hand corner of that screenshot, it just says GuideStar, GuideStar.org. If you don't already have a login for it, you're just going to create a free username and password. Next slide. And from there, I think we've got an animation here. Once you are logged into your free account, you're going to search for your organization either by its name or its EIN. And when you find it, you'll just fill out a few fields to validate that you are a legitimate representative of your organization. One tip for this is, if possible, try to use like a work email address, like a .org email address, when validating your connection, because our team on the back end is going to make sure before they approve you that you really are a legitimate representative of your organization and should have the ability to get in. And it'll be a faster process getting approved if you're not, say, using a Gmail address. You can still do it, but it'll take a little bit longer, and they might like ask you for a little bit more information along the way if they're not sure. Next slide. After they've approved you, then you can get into your profile. You can click where it says update nonprofit profile, and it will say, oh, here are your organizations on GuideStar. This screenshot here shows Candid because we're a nonprofit ourselves and we keep our own profile updated. We have a platinum seal of transparency. So you can choose, here's your organization, hit edit, and you can start adding information. Or if you already have a seal and you want to upgrade to the next seal of transparency, you could add additional information to do that, change things if you need to, etc. Next slide. Okay. Now maybe let's take a little bit of a look at what goes into each of these 4 seals of transparency. So you can figure out, like, where do we want to begin? Do we want to start small? Do we want to like shoot straight for the top? Somewhere in between? Next slide. Okay, so here are those 4 seals of transparency again. Bronze, quick and simple. Platinum seal of transparency will take a little bit more time, and everything in between. Next slide. Okay, so a bronze seal of transparency you could have very, very, very quickly. Really, you just need to put your mission statement in there and make sure that your leadership's contact information is up to date. I would say even if you just don't have the time, the bandwidth to go further than this yet, it would at least be worth your while to have a bronze seal for now. Because first of all, any seal is going to be more helpful than none. And if someone finds you on here and wants to donate to you, you want to make sure you have the most up-to-date contact information included so that you're sure that donors are sending their contributions to the right place. So bronze, at the very least, is helpful to do. Next slide. Okay, silver gets a little bit more involved. Still relatively simple though. This is about your programs and some basic branding. So here you can share some information about what kinds of programs do you run. So you can have like up to like 3 to 5 different programs if you like, and write just a little blurb. Here's what this program is that we run. Here's another program that we run. And if you want, you can include the geographic area that aligns to each of these, what kind of population you serve for these, etc. And the little picture on the right here is going to show roughly what this is going to look like in real life as someone opens up your profile to browse through what kind of programming you got. And that already is going to help people make better giving decisions. Next slide. Okay, then we also have branding. So if you want to include your logo, your tagline, things like that, you can do that if you want. You can put in your social media handles if you like if you have a very active presence on, I don't know, Instagram or whatever it happens to be, and you want to make sure that you're driving people there so that they can see what kinds of content you're putting up, you can do that. Or also, if you want, you can put photos and videos that can kind of really help enhance your storytelling within the organization. And like, if anyone here has taken the time to put together maybe like a short video that really beautifully tells the story of your impact, and you're always looking for ways to get that video in front of people, especially in front of donors and funders, this is a nice way to insert that, especially when, for instance, you're applying for grants. There's no way usually to stick a video into your grant proposal. Unfortunately, you just have to hope that funder is interested enough to explore further and find it. But they're very likely to find your Candid profile, and all of that information could be there for them, and they can get all excited about you. Next slide. Okay, now we get a little more intense here. Now we're moving up to the gold seal of transparency, which includes a lot of financial information and leadership details. Next slide. So a lot of this comes down to financial information. So if you have audited financial statements, recent audited financial statements, all you have to do is upload those. So if you have audited financial statements, it'll be quick and easy. But if you don't have audited financial statements, they will just have some fields for you to enter financial information manually. And even if you don't update this information, if you're nervous about, oh, financial information on brand profile, I don't know, just keep in mind that information in one way or another is there anyway, because your tax returns already live in your Candid profile, even if you've never touched it. It's just you can make things a little more comprehensive and up to date if you go through this step as well. And on the right, you'll see here's what some of that information looks like once you've added it. Got your revenue versus expenses over time. So it can kind of tell a story to people of how have you been performing financially over the years? Are things steady? Have things been like going up in terms of your budget size? What is the situation here? And it just, again, helps people make informed decisions. Next slide. Okay, and then we move into demographic information. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Janet, who can tell you a little bit more about what you can do with demographic information on Candid.
Yes, and what you're seeing here is just an overview of some of the tips we provide, because we know not all nonprofits have experience in collecting and sharing demographic data, yet it's something that's of growing interest to funders. So the specific tips we share are to ask, don't guess. So do create a survey, and we do have survey templates that can help with this. Communicate that it's going to be for a public profile, so your respondents have the option to opt out if they so choose, and along those lines make clear it's voluntary. The survey templates we provide do outline that you can decline to state or not collect, or specify that you do not collect. And this aligns with an initiative that I work on here at Candid called Demographics via Candid. Next slide, please. And so let me review kind of the background of what exactly is Demographics via Candid. Next slide, please. Since the pandemic disproportionately impacted already struggling communities, you might have noticed that there's been a growing interest among funders to better understand the reach of their giving portfolios, which in turn led to increasing requests to grantees from these same funders to provide staff and leadership demographic data. While the intentions here were good, the result that I'm sure many of you have experienced is that this created a staggering demand on nonprofits to comply with what essentially are custom data requests from a number of different funders, each using different demographic categories and questions to collect this data. So for example, in a single year, Candid counted more than 100 unique requests for such data. At least we have a development department that can try and comply, but what about those who don't? And even if we tried to comply with all of them, they each use different categories. So as a result, that would mean we'd have to create different surveys every time we're applying to a different funder. And what sense does that make? So we wanted to help create a more efficient process, since transparency and data are what we've been doing for many years. Next slide, please. The vision of demographics via Candid is essentially to reduce the burden on nonprofits by providing a standard way and a central place for sharing demographic data just one time, hopefully annually, on the Candid profile, where it can be accessed by other funders, researchers, and anybody who's interested in it. The initiative uses what we already have, the Candid profile that you've heard about, and encourages data standards that are freely available to all. We offer the data in multiple ways, again, for free, so partners can choose an option that best suits their needs, and I'll provide some details about the different ways to access the data for those who are interested. And as nonprofits, Candid also provides resources and support for nonprofits to help you participate and update your profile. We're a nonprofit ourselves. We've done capacity building for many years, so it's sort of baked in that we have a lot of training and support, which often proposal applications don't. There's a lot of benefits to this approach, so let's review them. Next slide, please. This provides an aggregate data to inform the full view of equity across the sector, which is something that's missing when each foundation collects it one at a time. There's no aggregate data to help people view patterns and trends. Similarly, it allows organizations to benchmark and identify gaps and track their progress. It also allows Candid to respond to questions we get from funders with increasing frequency, which is how to find nonprofits that are reflective of the communities that they serve. And it enables nonprofits to save a lot of time. We just have to share our data one time, again, hopefully annually, as you get your annual seal of transparency, and then any funder who wants it can access it there, rather than creating an endless loop of surveys that you have to do to satisfy each different funder. Next slide, please. And just to reinforce this, no one wants to collect this data for data's sake, and Candid certainly is not encouraging any funder who's not interested in this data to start collecting it. Ideally, we're using it to learn and improve. And so just as one example, a big advantage of having a standard national data set for this information is that we can use it to conduct analysis and share trends and patterns to surface unintended disparities. So hopefully we can do better. And this year we did just that. At the start of the year, we had nearly 60,000 charities reporting their data directly to us. And we used that data, our research team used it to issue a first of its kind report on the diversity of the US nonprofit sector. And spoiler alert, a key finding of the report was that although the nonprofit sector does have diverse representation across its workforce from many communities, the story is much different when one looks at leadership, particularly of wealthy organizations, which tend to not reflect the full diversity of the broader sector. The report provides a detailed analysis of the different dimensions of the diversity that we track, and I'll drop in a link to it in a few moments so you can all access it, because it makes for very interesting reading. Next slide, please. And in case you're wondering, this slide shows an example of Candid staff and board demographics data in the framework that we use, which tracks a variety of demographic categories. And we collect race and ethnicity data, but also gender identity, transgender status, sexual orientation, and disability status. Except for the demographics of the leader, all of the staff demographics are shared in aggregate form. so they're not identifiable. And we provide survey templates so you can survey your staff and board. And again, because we realize that not all staff will feel comfortable responding to certain questions, the survey language does provide opt-out options and makes clear that it is voluntarily provided. Next slide, please. And there's lots of benefits to nonprofits for working this way. For example, as you know, again, you can't underestimate the savings on paperwork and having more time to focus on your mission rather than endlessly creating surveys to satisfy a particular funder. As Tracy explained, it also increases your visibility with all kinds of funders, and not just foundations, but also donor-advised funds that are held at community foundations. We were just talking to a donor advisor the other day in a community foundation that told us that their donors do research charities on the platform all the time, and many use filters specifically to only look at charities that have achieved a gold or higher transparency status because they want to get to know those organizations that are sharing more information willingly about themselves. It also is a way for you to activate your commitment to diversity and inclusion and kind of operationalize things that are in many of our values already. And lastly, we have a Go for the Gold promotion that is a great benefit for smaller nonprofits of $1 million or less. In exchange for getting gold status, we reward you with free access to Foundation Directory, which is the premier fundraising tool that many use to identify foundations and foundation partners and learn more about what kinds of organizations they're seeking, so you can make that match. Next slide, please. We recognize that there's more steps to providing demographic data for nonprofits than just hitting publish like some of the other sections. So Candid provides several resources that can be shared to guide you through this process. I mentioned survey templates already. We also have a free short course with tips on how to get started with demographic data and helpful guides. So in a moment, I'll chat those links into those resources that can help you get started. Next slide, please. I also want to mention the growth of this. We've been very happy to see this has hit a nerve with people in a positive way. Since Demographics via Candid launched at the beginning of last year, on average, 1,000 nonprofits have newly been sharing their demographic data each month, and we currently have more than 72,000 organizations represented. Demographics via Candid also has grown to more than 170 sector partners, including our friends here at Cal Nonprofits, who we're very grateful to for their partnership, both on this webinar and on the initiative. And for example, this data will be helpful next year when Cal Nonprofits conducts its causes count report, because they'll easily be able to access demographic data freely on California nonprofit demographics and analyze it for the report. So that will save you time in having to report to multiple different places about your demographics, just as one example. And because of that power of multiple actors using it, we are committed to making this data available for free in a number of ways to partners and to the field. So let's briefly look at that. Next slide, please. The first way you can access demographic data is simply by registering for a free account on our GuideStar platform. And Candid's GuideStar contains the comprehensive information on nonprofits that Tracy's been talking about. And as part of the free profile, it also means you can easily view the demographics of any charity that has submitted this data through their Candid profile. We also make the demographic data available via an API, which means it can be easily integrated into a funder's grant-making process, pre-populating this data, so nonprofits don't have to keep entering it every time they apply to a different funder. We also partner directly with some of the leading grants management software platforms, so it could be integrated directly into the workflow that funders use, again, saving time ultimately for all of us to having to enter it for every application. We also make it available through a public-facing Tableau dashboard that allows researchers or anyone to search for and surface demographic data trends in the US, in particular regions or states. And the last way is anyone who is researching can request a single file of the demographic data. This option is geared toward those that may want to combine our data with other data sets like the 990. And there's a simple form you fill out to just let us know your research purpose. And we just had a student pull the data today for their senior thesis on climate change. So we're excited to provide it for all kinds of purposes to help people get a full view of the sector. Next slide, please. I mentioned go for the gold. So before I turn it back to Tracy, I just want to emphasize this because if your nonprofit is relatively small with under $1 million in annual revenue, Candid's Go for the Gold can help you. If you earn the 2024 Gold Seal of Transparency, which includes entering your demographic data, you'll receive free access to Foundation Directory Essential for a year to help you research potential foundation partners. So I'll be chatting in some of the links I just shared, and we can also email those after, but that's just a quick overview. And Tracy, back to you.
All right, thank you, Janet. All right, let's maybe move to the next slide, please. Okay, I'll finish off my little bit of this song and dance with just a brief description of what happens when you hit the platinum seal of transparency. So we've moved from the basic contact information to programming information to finances and demographics, and now we're making it all the way to the level of what is your impact. Next slide. All right. So if you want to get a platinum seal of transparency, you have two choices. If you have a recent strategic plan from the past 5 years, upload it. Easy. Platinum seal of transparency. Done. Or if you do not have a recent strategic plan to take a look at, you answer 2 questions. And they're very straightforward questions. What is your organization aiming to accomplish? And what are your strategies for making this happen? And I know whenever we teach grant writing classes at Candid, and we go over what do funders really want to know about you, those 2 questions, word for word, are on the list of things that funders want to know about you. So you should probably be accustomed to answering those questions every day, regardless. But yeah, that will help you get to the platinum seal of transparency. Next slide. Okay, and to flesh out your impact, you have the opportunity to share some metrics that you collect to demonstrate and prove your impact so that when people are looking you up, they can tell, yeah, this is a place whose programs work, they get results, they make real change happen, and here's the evidence. So you have the opportunity to display your top 3 to 5 metrics with some data in them. And over here on the right, if you take a close look, you can see from Candid's profile, we have a platinum seal of transparency. What are some of the metrics we're using to tell our story of impact? And you're seeing, how many people are, for instance, visiting GuideStar and looking at profiles? And you can see between 2015 and today, that number keeps growing and growing. Who has seals of transparency on GuideStar? You can see that number growing, but you can also include context notes if you need to. If you ever have a strange year where your outcomes were either unusually bad or in some cases unusually good, and you want to be able to explain why. Like for instance, in 2020 and 2021, for a lot of us, our outcomes changed. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but either way, they often changed. You have a chance to explain that. And you can connect your metrics to a target population or a program if you want to. So it really helps give people a lot of good information of what's actually happening behind the scenes at your nonprofit. Next slide. And if you're struggling at all with figuring out what kind of metrics can we use, to show our impact. We also have a really wonderful resource that I love mentioning that you can access through the GuideStar site. It's called the Common Results Catalog. It's a big PDF. I don't know, it's like roughly 50 pages long or something like that. And it just goes through all types of organizations, subject areas you might work within, with list after list of ideas of types of metrics you could collect. And it helps you flesh out your GuideStar profile, but it also is just helpful in your nonprofit life day to day. If you're designing programs and want to make sure that they're going to be effective, if you have to create a logic model, things like that. This is a wonderful free resource that can help you figure out your impact and your metrics. Next slide. Okay, so basically, as you're updating your profile, you want to be able to get access to it. You want to add whatever information you've chosen to add to it. Don't forget to hit the button that says publish. Next slide. Once you have published, you can go to the benefits section afterwards, and this will give you some options for you'll have a dedicated link to your profile that you can share wherever you want. You could tuck it into your grant proposals or your fundraising appeal letters. You can put it on your website. You can post it on social media, put it in your newsletters, wherever you want. So this way you can spread the word, come check out our profile, see all this information. And it makes you look so good. It makes you look credible. So that's kind of a nice thing that you can do. Also in the benefits section is where you'd go if you're taking advantage of that Go for Gold campaign that Janet was talking about, and you want to get your free 1-year subscription to the foundation directory. You'll get that information in the benefits section here. Next slide, please. Yeah, this I think I already mentioned. You will, once you've done this, get your own unique link, put it everywhere, spread the word, it'll be great. Next slide. If you need resources to kind of help you out along the way, we put out a guide every single year to help people through the process of collecting the information they're going to need to flesh out their profile. So that's there for you. And also we have a really good, robust help section on guidestar.org with a good FAQ included that can answer most of the questions you might have along the way. But if there's ever kind of a next level difficult question you have, you can also get connected to our support team. They're very nice people and they know the system inside and out and they can help you. They're not bots. They're very helpful people. Next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, if you so choose, your mission is to claim your nonprofit's profile, start working towards earning some seals of transparency, and you can always get help along the way at help.guidestar.org. I think that's the end of my section of the slides, so I think we are turning it over to Vanessa at this point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy and Janet. It is a pleasure to be on this panel with you all today, and it's a pleasure to join all of you out there today. Thank you so much for making time for this really beneficial conversation. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Vanessa Schneid. I help lead Cause Communications. We're a nonprofit based here in California that helps changemakers like you strengthen your impact by tapping into the power of communications. Cause is the first nonprofit of its kind to focus on communications effectiveness in the social sector, and we focus on 3 programmatic areas. The first is developing practical free tools and resources. The second are our community-centered training programs that build both skills and peer networks. And third, we offer strategy-level counsel to support both emerging and established community leaders. So in the next few minutes, I'll be sharing a little bit more about why we choose to invest in building out our Candid profile, how those benefits can be applicable to you, and some tips for how to put these concepts into action in your own organization. And these tips are designed for organizations that already have a profile and are looking to move to that next level, and for those who are just getting started. Next slide. All right, so Tracy and Janet have already shared a ton about how these profiles are packed with opportunity. Here's what that means at Cause and what's in it for us. First, go beyond the 990. So we really see our profile as a storytelling opportunity. It's a chance to paint a fuller picture than what is captured in the 990, and it provides context for all of that data. Second, we see our profile as a way to make our organization more discoverable. So we know that lots of people, including funders, rely on Candid profiles to research organizations and look up 990 information. Tracy's comments earlier, certainly underscored that. And so having a profile lets us introduce ourselves in the places where people are already spending time. And in this era of, gosh, ever shortening attention spans, this is a one-stop shop approach that means I don't have to rely on someone looking up the 990 for my organization and then visiting our website to understand more fully what we do and the impact that we make in the world, right? So we're meeting those audiences where they are. Third, own your story. Now, customizing our profile means that we're the ones in the driver's seat shaping what we want people to know about our organization. And so that means that we can make a really strong first impression on our own terms. Fourth, showcase your values. It's interesting. I often hear folks talk about how your organization's budget is a statement of your organization's values. Well, a profile lets us elaborate on that even more. So I'll give you an example. At Cause, we consider ourselves to be a capacity building organization, but even that term, capacity building, has come under close inspection and honestly scrutiny in recent years, and rightly so, for the ways in which some technical assistance programs fall into this trap of a more top-down prescriptive approach of what nonprofits need to know or even like what effectiveness looks like. So our profile gives us an opportunity to talk about how equity and lived experience and community-based leadership is really key to our approach. And that's something that you just wouldn't find elsewhere. Lastly, our profile is an opportunity to expand understanding. So specifically when it comes to the demographic information, this section of the profile allows us to paint a more expansive picture of what diversity looks like at our org. Okay, so what do these opportunities look like in action? Next slide. Great. So here's a snippet from our profile where we describe the need for and urgency around the work that we do. As you can see from lines like first nonprofit of its kind dedicated to communications effectiveness, we're able to highlight how we are unique. So again, we really see these as storytelling opportunities. And the specificity and the breadth go way beyond what you can glean from just the mission statement, which is often what you see in the Form 990. All right, next slide. So why does all of this matter? What benefits have we seen at Cause as a result of doing this? Well, telling our story means that audiences have a clear, more accurate picture of what we do and our broader vision for the change that we seek to create. It also means greater transparency around challenges and change. And that transparency, in our experience, fosters trust and helps us connect with the partners that are the right fit for us. Right? We don't need to be all things to all people, but we do want to find our kindred spirits out there who want to be part of this broader vision with us. So, and really, those partnerships go both ways, right? I'm talking about the organizations that can benefit from our programs, as well as the funders who see what we're striving for, and again, want to be part of that broader vision. And the reality is that we look at profiles all the time to help us understand if a partnership is the right fit. And so we would expect others to do the same. Oh, and here's something cool. We've actually had new partners tell us that they noticed the seal of transparency on our website. So that helps build trust too. And all of these benefits that I'm mentioning are available to you, no matter whether you're a large, well-known organization or a newer nonprofit who may be lovingly seen as your community's best kept secret. In fact, one of the things that I love is that there's an element of equity in resources like the Candid profile, in that everyone has access to building out a profile. There's no pay-to-play component where you only get a blue check mark or a seal of transparency if your budget is big enough. What I also know is that even free resources are an investment when it comes to our time. And that is rarely a surplus, there's rarely a surplus of that, at least for us here at Cause. So let me wrap up by sharing a few practical tips that have made this process easier for us and maybe helpful for you too. All right, next slide, please. Okay, tip number 1, prioritize key information. Take the pressure off of yourself to try to capture everything about your organization. It's impossible, you don't have time to do it, and no one has the attention span to read it. So instead, focus on 3 things: what you do, why it matters, and how you are unique, or what sets you apart. Second, take a look at what language and descriptions are already in circulation at your organization. There's no need to start from a blank page. And not only is this approach less work, but you also get the benefit of consistency across platforms. It's a chance to reinforce those key points that you are shouting from the rooftops of various other communications channels. It's also a great opportunity for internal collaboration. So if you're on the development team, reach out to whoever does communications in your organization to work on this profile together. If you do communications, partner with your fundraising team. Lastly, I invite you to think creatively about, what does impact look like in your organization? There's enough flexibility, as we were seeing from the slides that Tracy was showing us earlier. There's enough flexibility in the profiles for you to showcase that. And so in this way, the profile is an even stronger reflection of your organization's values. At this point, I am delighted to turn it over to Amy to continue the conversation and uplift even more specific examples.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Greetings, everyone. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation today. My name is Amy Shea. I'm the Senior Director of Institutional Partnerships at the Glide Foundation. I'm also a board member of a very small organization based in Los Gatos, California, called the Eating Disorders Resource Center. And I also teach grant proposal writing at Cal State East Bay's Nonprofit Management Certificate Program. If you could move on to the next slide, please. Yeah, I'm proud to say that both organizations that I'm affiliated with, the Glide Foundation and Eating Disorders Resource Center, we've achieved the platinum level of transparency from Candid for both organizations. This level of transparency is really important, but in very different ways. So the Glide Foundation, we are a premier, very large legacy institution in the city of San Francisco. Through our association with Glide Memorial Church, we've been an anchor institution in the Tenderloin neighborhood of San Francisco for over 100 years. We have over 11,000 individual donors. We don't know everything about each of those donors who primarily donate through our annual giving program, but we do know that our main sources of communication with our donors is through our multiple social media channels, our newsletter that reaches 80,000 individuals, and our website. Our Candid seal of approval is featured prominently on our giving page on our website and on all of our donation pages. For the Eating Disorders Resource Center, we're a very different organization. We're really tiny. We have a volunteer executive director, just a few part-time staff, and a small army of volunteers that work with our organization. It's safe to say that our Candid Our Candid seal is much more important for such a small organization. Whenever we submit our grant proposals, we send links to our annual report, our newsletters, our Candid profile, and our client testimonials that are available on the internet. So I'd like to just share a couple tips about how organizations share their seal of transparency on our communication channels. If you could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so here on the left side of the slide, I've taken a screenshot of our giving page on our Glide website. You can see that it's prominently displayed, as well as a brief explanation of what the platinum rating means. If you click on the orange Learn More link, it pops up to a separate page. Here it explains what the platinum rating means and a little bit about Candid. Here it says the Candid Platinum Seal is achieved by only 1% of US-based nonprofit organizations. And it's something that we're very pleased to align our personal brand with. So included in this explanation, we say that, through our Finance, Investments, and Audit Committee, our Board of Directors has exemplified prudence and diligence in our fiscal oversight. And we're proud to say that our Platinum Seal instills high trust and comfort in our donors and supporters, knowing their gift will go directly to those who need it most. If you can move to the next slide, please. So our Candid Platinum Seal is featured on all of our donation pages for all of our campaigns. You can see it here displayed prominently, and here it says the charitable dollars that you give go directly to providing daily free meals and services for individuals and families experiencing homelessness and poverty in San Francisco. And it also says that GLOUD is proud to have recently achieved our platinum rating, their highest, from Candid for our financial transparency. So next slide, please. Yeah, so this is our Candid profile for the Eating Disorders Resource Center. I would say that besides our website, our Candid profile is probably our most important marketing tool. We share it with all of our donors. And next slide, please. The Candid Seal is featured prominently on the homepage of our website. And next slide, please. Yeah, since we're such a small organization, our only communication vehicles are really our website and then our quarterly newsletters. And you can see at the bottom of each of our newsletters, we prominently display our Candid Seal, some information that EDRC has earned our Candid Platinum Seal of Transparency. And here we also have a link to our client testimonials. Definitely, from our experience, there is a through line, direct connection between a nonprofit's fundraising success and their relationship to transparency and trust. We are really, really fortunate to be able to have access to these free tools from Candid, and definitely have seen a lot of success, and definitely it has helped our fundraising. So happy to answer any questions that you might have about how we use Candid in our fundraising. Thanks so much.
Well, I think I'll bring you back on. We have a couple of questions that I might pass along to Tracy and Janet. There's two in the chat coming from Joanne, and I'll just read them off. Joanne says, so how does the transparency ranking influence how a potential funder may view you? Does it create a bias in judgment? And we've kind of talked about this already, but maybe you could give a little bit more color for Joanne.
Janet, do you want to
Sure.
go first, or shall I?
I have one thought to share, and then welcome you to weigh in as well. I think it was actually Vanessa who mentioned this, and I think it's a great point that in a way, the candid profiles are a great leveling that can avoid bias because, very resourced organizations can afford a lot of bells and whistles for a fancy website, whereas a grassroots organization doesn't have that option. And the candid profiles kind of are a great equalizer in that sense, and everything is formatted very similarly, and it allows organizations to present the facts about their work so that a donor can streamline their proposal application process, which is another place we often see bias in the traditional way things are done, which is lengthy proposal applications that, again, people with development staff have an advantage over organizations without. But if you are putting this information into a profile on Candid, it's publicly available and donors can leverage and learn from it. And it sort of helps streamline that process, which hopefully will lift all boats and avoid some of the more, the burdens and biases that come about when proposals are longer and longer and when there's unique ways that you have to provide this data to a funder. I don't know if you have anything to add, Tracy.
Well, I mean, I will say I agree completely. Like the fact that not everyone out there is the Red Cross. And I mean, no shade to the Red Cross. They've been around for a long time for reasons. But for instance, when a disaster hits and people are looking for places to donate right away or grants to give right away, immediately they might otherwise just think of what are the household name organizations that we might give to. But like, I think this listing of all of these organizations through Candid gives smaller organizations an opportunity to be at that same level as one of those enormous household name organizations. And I think Amy's example kind of indicates that, of representing both a large organization and a small organization, and how they can be on relatively equal footing in terms of getting their face in front of donors, in front of funders in that case.
I think that's great. I loved, Janet, your term of phrase, lifting all boats. I think that makes lots of sense. The second question we have is, how does identifying reflective agencies of interest work to us? Can you demonstrate or talk us through the process and what results we might get?
I wonder, is this question referring to, say, identifying fellow nonprofit organizations who might be peers, collaborators, etc.? Let's see. Do I have screen sharing privileges? Because if so, I could demonstrate. Oh, hey, I do have screen sharing privileges. Okay, so let's say you want to find out who are the other actors in your field. Here we are, we're on GuideStar.org. A lot of times I start this process just by doing a blank search and kind of exploring things from there. And I could say, all right, who are the other nonprofit organizations within the state of California? So I go into geography. Here we have over 300,000 other nonprofits in the state of California. And let's say we are, I don't know, an environmental organization. We could go here under organization, look under subject area and find, all right, who are the organizations who do something similar to us? Or you could also search for who does something complementary to us. And we're trying to get at the intersection of our goals. Maybe you do something related to climate change. Who are the climate change organizations operating in California? We have 251 of them. You could narrow it down further from there if you wanted, maybe one specific part of the state or budget level, whatever you want to do. But the point is, you see, here are your peers right in front of you. And whenever you find something you like, click on them, you learn more about them, and you decide, hey, do we want to work with this organization? In what capacity? Who do we reach out to, etc.? I hope that answers the question.
Thanks so much, Tracy. I think that's great. Really helpful to see your screen as well. I'll leave it back to Vanessa. And I want to extend a great thanks to all of our panelists today. I know we went through quite a bit of information, so I wanted to remind everyone that you will receive a recording of the webinar following the presentation, in addition to a copy of all of the slides. We'll also include Janet and Tracy's contact information in the case that you have specific questions that you'd like to reach out to them for more answers.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to keep the questions coming even after the webinar. We're happy to respond. And I hope to see you on the platform. Again, stand up and be counted. And thanks to Robert and Cal Nonprofits for their partnership on this, and to Amy and Vanessa for sharing peer tips. It's always great to hear how this actually works for organizations on the ground. So I appreciate you sharing from your lessons learned.